Hello everyone, you're listening to Lipstick and Leather, and with me right now in person is Mr. Chip Z Nuff. How's it going, Chip?
Thank you for having me on Lipstick and Leather. It's quite an honor. And I love your outfit, as a matter of fact. You have the Nuff Snuff shirt on with all the peace signs. I don't see that. That's an old throwback shirt.
Absolutely it is. You know, the first time I met you, I bought that shirt off you, actually.
Well, yeah. There I am, talking the dog off a meat truck. I love it. Beautiful.
All right, now, what is the next follow-up to the last album, Finer Than Sin? Is it going to be a new solo album from yourself, or will it be another Enuff Snuff album?
Well, that's funny you bring that up. I think it'll be another Enuff Snuff album, but I'm contractually obligated to come up with music for a couple of different labels. We're on Frontiers, and we're also on Cleopatra. Two fabulous labels. Frontier Records is a label out of Italy, it's over Europe. And then here in the United States, we're with Cleopatra Records and Brian Pereira. And Cleopatra has all the catalog stuff of Enuff Snuff. And then Frontiers has the newer stuff. I don't know what the next game plan is except to keep recording songs, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I think it'll be two albums in one. It'll be a studio record along with another live record that we shot and recorded a few months ago at a place called the Whiskey A Go Go in Los Angeles. So I'm hoping that by late this year, early next year, we'll have two brand new records. A live record from the Whiskey, which is, for us, it's a bucket list. Always wanted to record at the Whiskey A Go Go and do a live show and capture that magic. And then the studio record will be recorded. Most of it's in Chicago right now. And I may have some guest artists. I won't mention who they are, but there's some big guys going to be playing with us as well. So, and that should be, I think, our 21st or 22nd record. So we're catching up to the big bands out there.
Absolutely. Now, during the recording of the debut, Jane's Addiction were recording Nothing Shocking, and Skid Row were recording their debut. Did you guys get to meet the Jane's Addiction and Skid Row guys?
No, Jane's Addiction was they were just mixing their record that they already recorded. But Skid Row, I got a chance to hang out with them, obviously. And there was a lot of hard work in there. We were in the studio 6 days a week, both bands. Skid Row would be working until late at night, and then we'd go in early in the morning and start recording our tracks. So it was quite an illustrious time. It was during that whole Monsters of Rock phase where it was in Racine, Wisconsin. You'd have all these big concerts, 50,000 people would show up. And it'd be Van Halen, Whitesnake, Dokken, Motley Crue, all the bands would play there. So we were staying at the Americana Hotel, and Royal Recorders were situated in that hotel. Yeah, it seemed to be pretty nice. We got a chance to cross paths with the guys quite a bit. I remember at the end of the session, we drank their Dom Perignon that they were holding in the refrigerator to celebrate the end of the record. And Donnie took a $100 bill out, licked it, and slapped it on Snake's forehead. And I think that paid the bill. But nothing was ever the same since with those cats. We actually played our first show with Skid Row at a place in Milwaukee right after that. And it was a wonderful gig, great turnout. And Skid Row was just starting to get some traction. Our record really wasn't out yet. And we played the show, and after the gig, Donnie got arrested in the parking lot for drugs with one of the fans. So we spent the whole night in jail trying to get him out. That's one of my fond memories of recording in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and hanging out with Skid Row guys. And after that, we shared the same management company. Actually, Skid Row was managed by Scott McGee, Doc McGee's brother, and Doc was managing Enuff Snuff with a guy named Bob Brigham. And it was a nice little team. And then Skid Row, of course, went on tour on their own after that. And we jumped on the tour with Badlands.
Which one?
Now, did M80, your project with Desi Rex and Ronnie Yonkins, record any material?
We did record a bunch of songs. Nothing was ever released. And I wouldn't have those recordings. You'd think I would, because I always saved all this stuff. And there was some good songs that were there. But right after a 2-week session in Beverly Hills, Illinois, where Desi lived, Ronnie went and joined Kix, and then Desi put together D'Amal's, and I put together Enuff Snuff.
Right on. Now, there was talk to be a Peacemaker tour, of course, based on the TV show that Pretty Boy Floyd, Enuff Snuff, Tiger Tails, Choir Boys, many others were on. who is going to be on the lineup, and will this happen maybe for season 2 of Peacemaker?
Well, our agency, RS Worldwide, has talked about that, and I know James Gunn would love that, the director, but nothing's finalized, nothing's etched in stone. Right now, we're finishing out the year on a tour with Enough's Enough, going out with a few different bands. We're on the glam metal tour right now with Choir Boys and Bad Marriage, which features Tommy Skio from Tesla. After this tour, it's been a pretty strenuous tour, to say the least. We've probably done so far on this tour about 14 shows. We still got another 12 or 13 more to go, and then we jump out and do some shows with some other bands. Most notably Glenn Hughes, he's doing a Deep Purple thing. But we haven't figured out what the next year's in store for us. I want to get back to Chicago and finish up the new Enough's Enough album, so I have it ready to go. As far as the Peacemaker tour goes, perhaps next year, and some of those bands that you mentioned, I think we could be a part of it. But that Peacemaker tour may start over in Europe,
Okay.
and then come back here to the United States.
All right. Now, any chance of Lil Steven Van Zandt producing a future Enough's Enough album?
You know, I'd go back with little Steven Van Zandt in the old days. I remember him and I going out to his recording studio when he was playing his Salvation record for me, and it was fabulous. And I thought he was going to ask me to play bass with him, actually, because we got along great. And he wanted to produce Enough's Enough, but we just couldn't put all the parts together at that time. Maybe in the future it could happen. I know he's got a little thing called Lil Steven's Garage Radio. He plays us all the time, and he's got Cool Wicked Records as well. But for Lil Steven to come out and do that, he's so busy right now with TV shows and doing the Bruce Springsteen E Street Band stuff. I'm not so sure he can devote the time he would need to record an Enough's Enough album, but I've thrown it out there, and I'd love to work with him because I think he's a fabulous producer.
Definitely. Now, around the time of Dissonance, there was talk of Enough's Enough to record a version of Guns N' Roses' Night Train with Steven Adler playing. Did anything get recorded?
No, what I did was Steven Adler came out to Chicago around 2012, and he stayed at my house for about a month, and we recorded a bunch of songs. And what I would do is I'd just have him play drums, and during the recording sessions for bands that I was producing, and I'd record all of those sessions, and then I just put the tracks together, and I wrote songs around his drumming. That's how iconic of a drummer Steven is. I probably have 24 songs. I mean, really a lot of material. Whether he'll be able to put that together, with my engineer and make that happen, only time will tell. But we had such a good time in the studio because he's one of those old-fashioned drummers. You grew up listening to Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons and Queen, and he loved Led Zeppelin. He's a big old rock and roll school guy, and his drumming, his approach he takes to drumming is precisely that. He hears the songs in his head. That's what he did for Appetite for Destruction. That's why he got credit as a writer on those songs, because those parts were essential, and those grooves were a very important part of the fabric of those songs. Will I have him, will we ever record Night Train? I'm not so sure about that. And that was a good rumor, by the way. I heard that from quite a few people. But there is more Steven Adler stuff that I'm going to put on my future records. Most notably, the last Enough's Enough album, Steven played drums on a song called Honolulu Boogie by Mott the Hoople. And that's on my Perfectly Imperfect record, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe we'll cross that path. It's difficult to get Steven to leave his house. He loves his cartoons, Family Guy, American Dad, South Park, and he goes out usually every other week, and he'll go out with his band, which is just called Adler, and they'll do shows. So to get him to actually get out of the house and come out and see a show or go out and have a sushi dinner and stuff, it's very, very challenging. But hey, maybe anytime. Never say no. Never say never.
Awesome. Now, whatever happened to the tracks you wrote with Robin Zander for his 1993 solo album?
Got it. Robin's solo record was terrific. Nothing ever came about that, although he did sing on my solo record, which is called Strange Time. He sang on All Day and All the Night, which was coincidentally one of the first songs Cheap Trick played together with Robin when he joined the band. I thought that was nice of him to do that. I don't know if I can get Robin to come down there because he's so busy with Cheap Trick. He's doing so much stuff. His son's got a record out too, by the way. Robin Taylor Xander, he just did with Jack Douglas, who produced all those Cheap Trick and Aerosmith records. And it's really a good record. To get Robin to come down and do something, that's a possibility. I got Dex to play on something, but I have a song on the New Enough Snuff album that he wrote with me and Rick Nielsen and Donnie called Back to the Wall, and I think that's gonna contender for the New Enough Snuff album.
Now, how was it singing background vocals on the Cheap Trick song I Will Survive on the Gladiator soundtrack?
Yeah, it's always challenging. It's singing anything Cheap Trick. Are you kidding me? Robin Zander's the quintessential singer of my generation. He's always had a wonderful timbre. He's got, a man of 1,000 voices. We're both from the same school, though. We both loved all that English stuff. He's a huge Beatle fan as well as I am. And we get along fabulously. He used to babysit my daughter when she was born. He'd come by on the weekends and pick her up, and him and his lovely wife would take my daughter Tara out and watch her for a Saturday and Sunday and bring her back to the house. It was just so great to have her. He's like Uncle Robin to my daughter Tara. We have a great relationship. I don't see him all the time. We shared the stage at Rock Island Fest last year and Rock Island in Florida. And they were fantastic. Just Cheap Trick blew everybody away. They just come out there every night. There's no tapes, no sequencers, no synthesizers, no guys backstage. Just 5 guys really playing well. And having his son in the band playing guitar certainly helps too because he's got a beautiful voice. But the band is doing great. As a matter of fact, Cheap Trick's out on tour right now with Rod Stewart. So anybody wants to go see a great rock and roll show, check out Rod Stewart and Cheap Trick together because that's a formidable team.
Now, you opened for Al Jorgenstein from Ministry's old band Special Effects at Touch Generation. Do you still stay in touch with Al?
No, I don't stay in touch with him. The last time I seen Al Jorgensen was on a TV show that I was co-hosting called The Man Cow Show. It was on the U in Chicago. All my rock star friends would come down and hang out. And I remember Al walked in at 6 o'clock in the morning. He had a glass of wine. They said, "Oh, you can't drink on the air." So we had to put the wine in a plastic cup for him. But his interviews were great. We go back a long ways. Those Ministry days were, they're a blur to a lot of people. But to me, I had so much fun hanging out with Al because we used to go to a club in Chicago called Neo's. A guy named Cal Fortis used to own the place. And Neo's was one of those clubs that would start literally at night and go into early in the morning, and just one of those real promiscuous clubs, that had lots of drugs and questionable behavior behind closed doors. And the owners and the people there would just turn the other cheek, and Al would be in there all the time, and we'd be hanging out. And he asked me to join Ministry, I remember, there on the dance floor. He asked me if I wanted to do a Quaalude first. I passed on that because I wasn't sure if my body would be able to handle that. But he said, "You want to play bass in Ministry?" Because we did a lot of gigs together, and I told him that I was putting together a band called Enough's Enough. And I've seen him later on. We shared the studio at Chicago Tracks when he was recording some of his records. I think he's a fabulous talent. In school, when we both went to school, in high school together, he went to a different school, but he was a ball player, and so was I. We both were pitchers. He's a really talented cat. He hates when I talk about it, but I was proud to say that, the guy was not only just a great musician, but he's a killer athlete too, and he just took the same path I did. He had more to say writing a song than throwing a curveball or a slider.
Now, do you still own Nikki Sixx's stage clothes your A&R person gave you around 1992?
Yeah, I certainly do. It's funny you say that you asked me that question because Karen Dumont, who used to live with Nikki Sixx, she was our A&R director over in Los Angeles. We gave her all the demos. We turned Nikki Sixx onto all our cassette tapes of all the new songs that we had. We really bonded with that cat, And then when we were putting the record together, we needed photos, and none of us had any money or any threads. So Nikki was kind enough to give Karen some clothes. Because we're sort of the same size, him and I. He had threads in his huge closet that he wasn't wearing. He just gave her some shirts and some pants and some jackets and stuff. And I ended up wearing all that stuff on the Enough Snuff first album. I even thanked him. I said, thanks to Nikki Sixx for unwittingly supplying the threads. I think he's a great guy. And then I seen him on the stadium tour. I was with one of the cats backstage on the stage watching the shows. They were fabulous, I thought. And during the show, my wife filmed just a couple, like 5 or 6 seconds of Nicky Fred, his guitar tech, putting the bass on him, and Nicky taking his bass off and giving it to her. And I thought it was fantastic footage. It was something that fans normally don't see anywhere. It was really good, but evidently I ruffled Nicky's beautiful peacock feathers, because a couple days later, the road manager from Def Leppard called me and says, "Hey, did your wife record any stuff on the stadium tour?" I said, "Yeah, she filmed a couple small things." He goes, "Well, evidently she put something on Instagram of Nicky putting the bass on, and he wants it taken down." She had like 300,000 people on there that loved it. It was something that the fans normally don't see. I would be proud of that piece, but evidently we both swim in different lakes. And so I had my wife take it down off there so I wouldn't piss off the guys and crew, because I have nothing but respect for their legacy. And he's written some great songs. And we certainly weren't there to cause any trouble. If anything, we were there to celebrate rock and roll and heavy metal. And that's what I do for a living, same thing Nicky does. And we make records for a living, go out and tour around the country. And hopefully his wounds have healed since then. We took it down and everything's cool with us. I did talk to Vince that day, though. He was charming as a fucking prince to me. He's just so nice. So I'm glad the guys are out there working. Def Leppard does the same thing with that band too. Just wonderful guys who show up every single night. They put on a great performance. They really love their fans.
Now, how is it meeting David Bowie on his Glass Spider tour?
I'll tell you, that was a bucket list for sure. Jackie Blue took me, my old stepsister, took me to the show, and went back. I went on the stage actually after everybody left the building. I walked up on stage, and Bowie came out smoking a cigarette. And I thought, fuck, this guy's got so much charisma. He's such a chameleon. And we just said hello, and it was on my birthday, as a matter of fact. We both said hello and shook hands. I told him he looked terrific and it was a great show. And he said thank you. And then some other people came by and started talking to him, and that was the end of it. But it was really a wonderful moment to be able to be in the same space and breathe the same air as David Bowie. Because I grew up, I had many questions to ask him, but it would have been inappropriate at the time. But I'm just glad we got a chance to cross paths together. And a big influence on my life, that's for sure. Musically and as a person, he's left a lot of people out there with great memories, with his wonderful songwriting and a beautiful voice.
Do you still own your Meet the Beatles gold record?
I certainly do. I have so many gold records and platinum records. At one time, during the shutdown around the country, when the virus came in, everybody was scampering to try to find what worked. And I had a bunch of records that my old manager, Herbie Herbert, gave me. Herbie used to manage Roxette, Mr. Big, Santana, I think he had for a while. I know he had Steve Miller, Europe, and most notably, besides Mr. Big, he had the great band Journey. So I was at Herbie's house. It was before he moved to Orinda, and he had all these gold and platinum records. And he goes, "Here, Chip." He knew I was a big Journey fan. He listened to Journey in the early days. I was in the Journey when that next record came out. I think it was their second album, and they were just great. And Greg Rowley was a singer in the band then. Before they had Robert Fleischman in the band, and of course then Steve Perry. So he gave me these gold and platinum records, and they're just fabulous to have those as gifts. So when that whole virus came in there and everything was shut down, and the government was basically looking at us musicians like it was a hobby to us, when it was really our life, and it was not only hurting us but hurting the fans too. No shows, nobody could do anything. We just been pretty much secluded and stuck in our space until they opened up the doors for life again. And I was able to withstand the punishment by selling some guitars to my best buddy Ron over at Nighthawk, which is a production company that does McCartney and the Stones, all the big bands, the big screens behind the stage. He bought a bunch of guitars off me, and I sold those platinum and gold records to keep me alive during that time, just so I could survive. I wish I had that stuff still, because it was great, but I kept the Beatle record.
Now, back in the day, you used to go by the alias, sometimes checking into hotel rooms, Baron Von Rasch. Do you ever go by that alias anymore, checking into hotel rooms for anything?
I'm grateful to be recognized by anybody. By the way, Baron Von Raschke was a world-famous wrestler, and we all loved him. He's a great Polish guy. He just had a wonderful sense of humor, and he's a very strong guy. He's a great actor. He had chops. And everybody, like, he had the claw. Everybody knew the claw. That was his signature move as a wrestler. When Enough Snuff was really doing well, and we had videos on MTV, and we were playing all the TV shows and playing arenas, I had to hide, so I needed an alias, and that's what I used. But not anymore. I go in all places, Chip Z Nuff, and if I'm recognized, I'm grateful for it. You know, we're in a day and age right now where let's not confuse motion with progress. I want people to see me and know that I'm out there playing, and that the band is Enough Snuff is as strong as ever. That's the way we go. And no rock star attitudes, no hiding or anything. I feel that Enough Snuff is one of the most accessible bands on the planet.
Good.
And you come to a show, you'll see it. We don't charge people for meet and greets to come out. I don't charge for autographs. I'm grateful they want to take pictures with us. That's fantastic. It's all part of the fabric of what we stand for.
Any truth that one of the original names for Enough Z Nuff being talked about, possibility, was the Capitals?
Yeah, it was something we talked about when we were going through a change of the guard with the way the music business was. We couldn't get a record deal anywhere. So we thought, well, maybe we change the name up and it might be a little more catchy. Those are a few names that were talked about. One of them was Trick or Treat. The other one was School Days. And we didn't like any of those names, actually. And we realized we started getting a following because we were opening for every band that would come through Chicago, whether it's the Guess Who or BTO or Cheap Trick, any gigs we played for free, didn't care, we just wanted an audience. And we started reaching some people, and so when Derek Shulman, who was the head of A&R over at Atco Records, he was the president of the company, which is a subsidiary of Atlantic, he said, we're going to change the name. And I said, oh man, listen, I'll change, I won't be Chip Z Nuff, I'll change my name right now. And he goes, how many people do you think know Enough Snuff right now, Chip? And I said, I don't know, 10, 20,000 people. He says, when I'm done with your band, millions are going to know who you are. So we went home that night thinking, well, the name of the band's going to change after our meeting we had in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And in the morning, I got a telephone call, picked up the phone at 8:30 in the morning. No one usually calls me that early. And it was Derek Shulman. And all he said was, you win, and hung up the phone. And we kept the name of the band.